I bought a $2 million villa on the oceanfront, dreaming of peace and quiet. But as soon as my son-in-law found out, he called. "We're on our way to you. There will be 15 of us. Prepare beds, towels, slippers, food. We'll be staying for 3 weeks. We'll be there in 40 minutes, so hurry up, old man." His arrogance boiled like an ocean storm, and I smiled and made a plan that would turn everything upside down. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The phone's shrill ring shattered the peaceful afternoon silence like glass hitting concrete. I set down the crystal wine glass I'd been unwrapping and reached for my cell, expecting perhaps a congratulatory call from an old colleague. Through the kitchen's floor-to-ceiling windows, the Pacific stretched endlessly blue, waves rolling against the private beach below my new villa. "Hello? Old man, we're already on our way to you." Brian's voice hit my ear like a sledgehammer. No greeting, no pleasantries, pure undiluted entitlement. "There'll be 15 of us, so prepare beds, towels, slippers, food, the whole deal. We'll stay for 3 weeks. We'll be there in 40 minutes, so hurry up." My hand tightened around the phone. 40 years of engineering work, careful savings, delayed gratification, all for this moment of peace in my dream home. Moving boxes still cluttered the marble countertops, packing papers scattered across surfaces I hadn't yet claimed as truly mine. "Brian, wait a minute. I haven't even fully moved in yet. The house isn't ready for—" "Listen, I don't care what you've got going on right now." His voice carried that familiar tone of casual dismissal, as if my concerns were mere background noise. "You've got money. That means you've got space. End of discussion." The ocean breeze through the open patio doors carried the scent of salt and freedom, but Brian's words poisoned the air. I gripped the granite countertop with my free hand, watching my knuckles whiten against the dark stone. "But Brian, this is my first week here. I still have boxes everywhere. No proper bedding set up for guests." "Figure it out, old-timer. You're retired, right? What else do you have to do?" The sound of car engines revved in the background of his call. "Jessica's already packed the kids' stuff. Mike and Ashley are bringing their crew, too. It'll be like one big family reunion." Family reunion. The words twisted in my chest like a rusted knife. After everything I'd done, everything I'd given, this was how he saw our relationship. A one-way street paved with my generosity and his assumptions. "I need time to prepare properly. Maybe next month when—" "Next month?" Brian's laugh was sharp, mocking. "We're already driving, Richard. Already committed. You wouldn't want to disappoint the kids, would you? Jessica's been telling them about Uncle Richard's fancy new beach house for weeks." "Uncle Richard? Not Grandpa Richard? Not even just Richard?" "Uncle," as if I were some distant relative obligated to provide entertainment for his convenience. The phone felt slippery in my sweating palm. "Brian, please be reasonable. 3 weeks is a long time, and with 15 people. Stop being so dramatic. Family helps family, remember? You taught me that." His voice carried a smugness that made my stomach turn. "Besides, what's the point of having all that money if you don't share it with the people who matter?" The people who matter. I closed my eyes, seeing Emily's face in my mind. My daughter, his deceased wife, the bridge between us that death had burned away 3 years ago. What would she think of this conversation? What would she say about her husband's tone, his demands, his complete disregard for basic courtesy? "Just have everything ready when we arrive. We're bringing beer, so make sure your fridge has space. Oh, and Jessica wants to use your master bedroom? It's got the best ocean view, right? We'll take that one." My master bedroom, the sanctuary I'd dreamed of for decades, with its private balcony overlooking the endless Pacific. The room where I'd planned to finally rest, to enjoy the fruits of 4 decades of careful living and strategic sacrifice. "The master bedroom is perfect. See you in 35 minutes now. Don't keep us waiting outside." The line went dead. I stood motionless in my sunlit kitchen, holding the silent phone like evidence of a crime. Through the windows, seagulls danced above the waves, their cries mixing with the distant sound of surf. This was supposed to be my paradise, my reward for a lifetime of putting others first. My hand still trembled slightly as I lowered the phone. 35 minutes, 15 people, 3 weeks. The wine glass I'd been unpacking caught the afternoon light, throwing rainbow patterns across the marble. Such a delicate thing, beautiful and fragile, like the peace I'd thought I'd finally earned. The phone slipped from my numb fingers onto the granite counter with a soft click. My legs felt unsteady as I walked toward the living room, past walls still bare of the artwork I'd carefully collected over the years. Everything waited in boxes, my life in limbo between the past and what I'd hoped would be a peaceful future. Emily's photo smiled at me from the mantelpiece, the only item I'd unpacked first, needing her presence in this new space. I picked up the silver frame with shaking hands, studying her warm brown eyes, the gentle curve of her smile. 3 years since cancer took her, but the ache remained fresh. "Dad, Brian's really trying to find work," her voice echoed in my memory. "Could you help us just this once?" Just this once. Those 3 words had become the soundtrack of my relationship with Brian Miller. I sank into the leather reading chair I'd positioned to face the ocean, Emily's photo cradled in my lap. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, but my mind drifted to darker times. The first emergency had come 6 months after their wedding. Brian's startup company had folded, leaving him unemployed with mounting credit card debt. $18,000 I'd transferred from my retirement savings, watching my carefully planned financial timeline shift forward by 6 months. "You're so generous, Dad," Emily had whispered over dinner that night. "Brian appreciates everything, even if he doesn't always show it." But Brian never showed it. Not when I paid for his MBA program, $45,000 spread over 2 years. Not when I covered their mortgage down payment because his credit score couldn't secure a decent rate. $60,000 that time, money I'd earmarked for my own dream house fund. I ran my fingers through my gray hair, remembering the pattern that had emerged. Every few months, another crisis. Emily's medical bills during her cancer treatment had been legitimate. $85,000 I'd gladly given to fight for her life. But even then, Brian had somehow made it about himself, complaining about the stress affecting his job performance. The ocean waves crashed rhythmically below, but I heard instead the sound of Brian's voice during Emily's funeral reception. "At least now we won't have all these medical bills hanging over us." My stomach had turned that day, watching him network with mourners, while I stood beside my daughter's casket. Even grief, it seemed, was just another opportunity for Brian to focus on his own convenience. After Emily died, I'd expected the requests to stop. Surely Brian would find his footing, build his own stability. Instead, they intensified. Car repairs when his warranty expired, property taxes he'd forgotten to budget for, Jessica's engagement ring upgrade because she deserved something special. I kept a mental tally, though I tried not to. $327,000 over 6 years, enough to buy a decent house in most American cities, enough to secure a comfortable retirement, without the financial anxiety that still woke me at 3 a.m., despite my careful planning. Standing slowly, I placed Emily's photo back on the mantelpiece and walked to my study. The ocean view from this room had sold me on the house, endless blue stretching to the horizon, promising peace and space to think. Instead, my reflection stared back from the window, an older man who'd spent 40 years building other people's dreams, while his own gathered dust. The worst part wasn't the money. Money could be earned again, saved again, managed more carefully. The worst part was the gradual erosion of respect, the slow transformation from generous father-in-law to expected ATM. Brian's tone had shifted over the years from grateful to entitled, from requesting to demanding. Today's call crystallized everything. No discussion of my circumstances, my needs, my plans. Just assumption and demands, wrapped in the thin veneer of family obligation. 15 people descending on my sanctuary like locusts, consuming what I'd spent decades building. My hands drummed against the windowsill as anger built in my chest, a slow, burning heat I'd suppressed for too long. Emily had always asked me to be patient with Brian, to remember that people show love differently, but Emily was gone, and Brian's version of love looked suspiciously like exploitation. The sound of car engines in the distance pulled me from my thoughts. Faint but growing louder, multiple vehicles approaching up the winding coastal road that led to my villa. My 35 minutes of peace had evaporated faster than morning fog. I checked my watch. 3:15 p.m.? Brian had made good time. Through the study window, I could see dust clouds rising from the private road that connected my property to the main highway. 4 vehicles, maybe 5, moving in convoy formation like an invasion force approaching a conquered territory. My jaw clenched as I watched them approach. This wasn't a family visit. This was a siege. Car doors slammed in rapid succession, the sounds echoing off the villa's stone facade like gunshots. I moved from the study window to the front entrance, watching through the side lights as 4 vehicles disgorged their passengers into my circular driveway. Brian's black SUV led the convoy, followed by 2 sedans and a pickup truck loaded with coolers, beach equipment, and enough luggage for a month-long expedition. 15 people. Brian hadn't been exaggerating. The front door felt solid beneath my palm as I gripped the handle, steadying myself for what was coming. Through the decorative glass, I watched Brian emerge from his SUV like a general surveying conquered territory. Designer sunglasses despite the afternoon shadows. That cocky stride I'd grown to despise over the years. Jessica tumbled out of the passenger side, blonde hair whipping in the ocean breeze, immediately pulling out her phone to record everything. "Oh my gosh, you guys, look at this place." Her voice carried clearly across the driveway. "It's like a resort." I opened the door before they could ring the bell, hoping to maintain some semblance of control over the situation. The hope died instantly. "What's up, old man? How do you like our surprise?" Brian pushed past me into the foyer, without waiting for an invitation, his eyes already scanning the interior, like he was taking inventory. "Jessica, look, there's the hot tub I told you about." "Brian, I told you on the phone that I'm not ready for guests." But my words were lost in the chaos as the rest of the group streamed through my front door. A man I recognized as Mike, Brian's college roommate, let out a low whistle. "Dude's got serious money. Why not share it with family, right?" Ashley, Jessica's sister, pushed through carrying 2 oversized suitcases. "This place is absolutely perfect for our vacation. The kids are going to love that pool." She gestured toward my infinity pool visible through the back windows. Kids. I hadn't heard anything about children on the phone. "Stop being so dramatic, Richard." Brian had already made it to the living room, his wet sandals leaving sandy footprints on my imported Italian marble. "Family helps family. You taught me that, remember?" More people flooded in, faces I didn't recognize mixing with others I'd met at Emily's funeral. Kevin, someone's boyfriend, carried a cooler full of beer like he was arriving at a college party. 2 women I'd never seen before were already discussing room assignments as if I weren't standing right there. "Excuse me," I called out, my voice barely audible over the growing din. "Could everyone please?" "Oh my gosh, you guys have to see this kitchen." Jessica had discovered the gourmet cooking space I'd spent months designing. She held her phone up, live streaming to her social media followers. "We're staying at my father-in-law's incredible beach house. Look at this view." Father-in-law, the title felt like sandpaper in my ears. Brian had never called me Dad, even when Emily was alive. Always Richard, always maintaining that distance. But Jessica claimed the family connection when it suited her purposes. Someone had found my sound system and filled the house with thumping music. Bags and coolers appeared everywhere, dumped in the foyer, stacked against my pristine walls, claimed spaces throughout my sanctuary like territorial markers. "Brian, we need to talk about this." "Later, old-timer. Right now we need to get everyone settled." He moved toward the hallway leading to the bedrooms, a parade of strangers following behind him. "Jessica and I'll take the master suite, obviously. Mike and Tracy can have the guest room with the ocean view. Ashley, you and Kevin take the one with the balcony." I stepped in front of him, blocking access to the bedroom wing. "The master bedroom is off limits. That's my private space." Brian's laugh was sharp and dismissive. He placed a hand on my shoulder, not affectionately, but with the casual condescension of someone moving an obstacle. "Come on, Richard. Don't be selfish. We drove 4 hours to get here. Jessica specifically wants the room with the best view for her morning yoga videos." The physical contact felt like a violation. I stepped back, but Brian simply pushed past me, leading his entourage down the hallway I'd walked alone for only 1 week. My hallway in my house, purchased with my money and my dreams. "This is perfect," Jessica's voice echoed from my bedroom. "The lighting in here is amazing for content creation." Content creation. My master suite was becoming a backdrop for social media posts. In the living room, Mike had opened his beer cooler and was distributing drinks without asking permission. Ashley was rearranging my furniture to create better conversation areas. Someone's child, I hadn't even seen them arrive, was running around the pool deck in wet swimwear, leaving dark footprints on the limestone I'd spent a fortune importing from Portugal. The invasion was complete. In less than 10 minutes, my peaceful villa had been transformed into a crowded vacation rental. my careful organization destroyed by the casual chaos of entitled guests who saw my generosity as their right. I stood in my own foyer, feeling like a stranger, watching people I barely knew claim ownership of spaces I'd dreamed about for decades. The ocean view through my windows remained beautiful, but it now framed a scene of occupation rather than tranquility. Brian emerged from my bedroom, grinning with satisfaction. "This is going to be the best 3 weeks ever. Jessica's already planning a housewarming party for tomorrow night. Hope you don't mind. She invited a few more people from her yoga studio." A few more people. My jaw clenched so tightly I thought my teeth might crack. This wasn't a family visit. This was a hostile takeover, and I was being demoted from homeowner to unpaid staff in my own paradise. Jessica emerged from my master bathroom like she owned the place, a white towel wrapped around her wet hair, water droplets marking a trail across my imported marble floors. She carried her designer suitcase with casual confidence, already planning where to arrange her belongings in my private sanctuary. "Excuse me." I planted myself firmly in the bedroom doorway, arms crossed. "This room is off limits." She paused, genuinely surprised by the resistance. "Oh, come on, Rick. We talked about this already. The lighting in here is perfect for my morning routine videos." "No." The word came out harder than I'd intended. "Everyone needs to leave. Now." Jessica's blue eyes widened with practiced innocence. She shifted her suitcase to one hand and placed the other on her hip, a pose I recognized from her social media photos. "Rick, honey, we're family. Why are you being so hostile?" Behind her, Brian appeared in the hallway, drawn by the unexpected confrontation. His expression darkened when he saw me blocking access to what he'd already claimed as his territory. "Richard, move aside. We've been driving for hours. This is my house." I stood my ground, my voice gaining strength with each word. "I want all of you to leave immediately." Brian's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Your house? Really? Did you forget everything you owe our family?" He stepped closer, invading my personal space with calculated intimidation. "Did you forget who the real victim is here?" The real victim. After $300,000, after 6 years of constant financial bleeding, after giving him my daughter's inheritance and my own retirement security, I was somehow the debtor in his twisted accounting. "I don't owe you anything." My hands shook, but not with fear, with suppressed rage that had been building for years. "This conversation is over." Jessica tried to squeeze past me with her suitcase, assuming my resistance was merely theatrical. I shifted to block her path completely, and she stumbled backward with a gasp of genuine shock. "Rick, that's so rude." The commotion drew others from throughout the house. Mike appeared with a beer in his hand, Kevin close behind carrying beach towels like trophies. Ashley emerged from the guest bathroom, her makeup half applied. Someone turned down the music, and suddenly the entire group was watching our standoff. "Dude, what's your problem?" Mike's voice carried the casual arrogance of someone accustomed to getting his way. "We're not hurting anything." "You're trespassing." I looked around at their faces, seeing entitled confusion where there should have been embarrassment. "All of you." Brian placed his hand on my shoulder with patronizing familiarity. "Emily would be ashamed of how selfish you've become, old man." That contact, unwanted, presumptuous, designed to diminish me, triggered something fundamental. I jerked away from his touch with enough force to make him stumble backward. "Don't you dare touch me." My voice carried a tone I'd never used before, one that made several people step back involuntarily. "And don't you ever use my daughter's name to justify your greed." Jessica's lower lip began to tremble in a performance I'd seen countless times when she wanted something expensive. "Daddy Rick, we just wanted to spend time with you. We thought you'd be happy to share your beautiful house with family." Daddy Rick? The nickname made my skin crawl. This woman who'd married my daughter's widower, who'd moved into the apartment I'd helped furnish, who'd worn Emily's jewelry to their wedding. She thought endearments would erase the audacity of her invasion. Happy? I looked around at the chaos they'd created in 30 minutes. "You want me to be happy about strangers claiming my bedroom, ransacking my kitchen, treating my home like your personal resort?" "We're not strangers," Ashley protested, though I couldn't remember meeting her before today. "We're Brian's friends. That makes us practically family." Practically family. The phrase that apparently granted unlimited access to my life, my resources, my peace. Brian sensed the mood shifting and tried to regain control. Look, Richard, I understand you're overwhelmed. Moving is stressful. But we're here now. We've made arrangements. And turning us away would create serious problems for everyone. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Serious problems? For whom? For his friends who'd driven 4 hours expecting a free vacation? For Jessica who'd promised her social media followers exclusive content from a luxury villa? For Brian who'd painted himself as the generous family member, providing his friends with access to his wealthy father-in-law's property? The only problem, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system, is 15 people who think they can occupy someone else's home without permission. Without permission? Brian's mask of reasonableness finally slipped. After everything this family has been through, after everything you've put us through with your demands and expectations, everything I'd put them through, 6 years of writing checks, covering emergencies, enabling their lifestyle, and somehow I was the one making demands. Kevin stepped forward, his beer-scented confidence filling the hallway. Look, Pops, maybe you should just chill out. We'll clean up after ourselves. No harm, no foul. Pops, another casual diminishment from a stranger drinking my beer in my hallway. The group was closing ranks now, their body language shifting from apologetic to defensive. 15 against 1, in my own home. They'd spent their entire drive here assuming I'd capitulate, planning their 3-week vacation around my expected surrender. Brian moved closer again, his voice dropping to the tone he'd always used when delivering ultimatums. Think carefully about your next move, Richard. Some decisions can't be undone. Some relationships can't be repaired once they're broken. There it was, the naked threat wrapped in concern for family harmony. Cross us and lose us forever. As if their presence in my life was a gift rather than a burden I'd carried for too long. I looked around at their faces, entitled, expectant, already calculating how to spin this story to make me the villain. In their minds, I was the unreasonable rich relative who'd forgotten his place in their hierarchy of need. But standing there in my own hallway, defending my own bedroom door, I finally understood something crucial. Some relationships were already broken. Some had never been real in the first place. The question wasn't whether I could afford to lose them. The question was whether I could afford to keep them. Brian's threat hung in the air like smoke from a house fire, toxic and impossible to ignore. 15 faces stared at me with varying degrees of hostility and confusion, waiting for my capitulation. They'd driven 4 hours expecting compliance, not confrontation. You're right about one thing, I said, stepping back from the bedroom doorway. Some decisions can't be undone. I turned and walked deliberately toward my study, fishing my phone from my pocket. Behind me, Jessica's voice rose in theatrical desperation. Where are you going? We need to talk about this like adults. Like adults. From a woman who'd spent the last hour photographing herself in my bathroom for social media content. Finally coming to his senses, I heard Brian mutter to Mike, probably calling his lawyer to change his will or something equally dramatic. The study door felt solid and reassuring as I closed it behind me, turning the lock with a satisfying click. This room was my sanctuary. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, my engineering texts, the massive oak desk where I'd planned my retirement finances. Through the window, the Pacific stretched endlessly, indifferent to human drama. I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's professional calm steadied my nerves. I need police assistance. There are people in my home who refuse to leave when asked. Sir, are you in immediate physical danger? Outside the study door, I could hear urgent whispers and the sound of footsteps. They were gathering, planning their next approach. Not yet, but they're refusing to leave my property, after being told multiple times. Can you verify that this is your legal residence, sir? Yes, I'm the homeowner. Purchased last month. I can provide documentation. The title papers sat in my desk drawer, official proof of ownership that felt suddenly precious. Heavy knocking erupted on the study door. Richard, Brian's voice carried forced joviality. Come on out. Let's discuss this reasonably. Sir, how many individuals are involved? The operator's questions followed standard protocol, each one reinforcing that I had legal standing here. 15 people. They arrived without invitation about an hour ago and are refusing to leave despite multiple requests. The knocking intensified. Jessica's voice joined Brian's, higher-pitched and artificially sweet. Daddy Rick, please don't do anything crazy. We can work this out. Officers are being dispatched to your location. Can you remain in a secure area until they arrive? Yes, I'm in my study with the door locked. The relief in my voice surprised me. After an hour of feeling outnumbered and dismissed, someone was finally treating my concerns as legitimate. Estimated arrival time is 15 to 20 minutes. Stay on the line if you feel unsafe. Through the door, I could hear the group's whispered conference growing agitated. Someone, Ashley, I thought, suggested they should just leave before this gets crazy. But Brian's voice cut through the uncertainty with his usual arrogance. He's bluffing. Richard doesn't have the backbone for this. He'll come out in 5 minutes and apologize. The backbone. After 40 years of engineering work, after building a career that provided for everyone around me, after sacrificing my own dreams repeatedly for others' comfort, he questioned my backbone. Thank you, officer. The police are on their way. I ended the call and sat back in my leather chair, feeling calmer than I had all day. The pounding on the door escalated from knocking to serious hammering. Open this door right now! Brian's mask of civility had finally dropped completely. This is family business, not a police matter. But it wasn't family business. Family doesn't invade. Family doesn't ignore clear boundaries. Family doesn't threaten consequences when their exploitation is challenged. Richard, please! Jessica's voice cracked with what might have been genuine emotion. How can you do this to us? We trusted you. They trusted me to provide unlimited access to my resources, to absorb their problems without complaint, to remain grateful for the privilege of being used. Mike's voice joined the chorus outside. Dude, this is insane. We're just trying to have a vacation. A vacation. At my expense, in my home, without my consent. The casual entitlement in his voice crystallized everything wrong with this situation. Through the study window, I watched seagulls wheel over the waves, free and unconstrained. For 40 years, I'd been the provider, the problem solver, the reliable source of solutions for everyone else's crises. When had I become the villain for wanting peace in my own home? The hammering on the door reached a crescendo, then suddenly stopped. Urgent whispers replaced the pounding. They'd realized their tactical error. Making threats and demands while I called police wasn't enhancing their position. Richard? Brian's voice had shifted to wounded innocence. We just want to understand what's wrong. Why are you so angry with us? What's wrong? 6 years of financial exploitation, an hour of home invasion, 15 strangers claiming my bedroom, drinking my beer, planning my social calendar. The question itself proved how little he understood about basic human decency. My phone buzzed with text messages. Brian had apparently decided on parallel pressure campaigns. Emily would want us to be together as a family. You're destroying relationships that can never be rebuilt. Think about what you're doing to innocent people who just wanted to spend time with you. Innocent people. I deleted the messages without reading the rest. Footsteps moved away from the door as the group retreated to plan their next move. Through the thin walls, I could hear heated arguments. Some wanted to leave immediately. Others insisted on standing their ground. Jessica was crying again, but this time it sounded less theatrical. 15 minutes. The police would arrive in 15 minutes, and this nightmare would end. I'd spent decades avoiding confrontation, smoothing over problems, writing checks to make difficulties disappear. Today, for the first time, I'd called for backup instead of capitulating. The sensation was both terrifying and liberating. Outside, car engines started. Some of the group was cutting their losses, unwilling to face police questioning about their vacation plans. But heavier footsteps remained in the hallway. Brian and his core supporters weren't retreating. The sound of sirens in the distance made my heart race with anticipation rather than fear. Help was coming. The sirens grew louder, cutting through the afternoon air like Judgment Day approaching. Outside my study door, the urgent whispers turned to panic-stricken strategy sessions. Footsteps scattered in multiple directions as reality finally penetrated their bubble of entitlement. Everyone just stay calm, Brian's voice carried forced authority, but I could hear the strain underneath. Let me handle this. It's just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. 15 uninvited guests refusing to leave someone's home wasn't a misunderstanding. It was trespassing. But Brian's entire worldview required casting himself as the reasonable party in every conflict. The doorbell rang with official authority, not the casual finger tap of social visitors, but the sustained professional pressure of law enforcement. Through my study walls, I heard the scramble of people trying to appear casual, cleaning up beer bottles and hiding evidence of their invasion. I unlocked my study door and emerged to find the group arranged in the living room like they were hosting an intervention. Brian had positioned himself near the front door, preparing to control the narrative. Jessica sat on my sofa with red-rimmed eyes, clutching tissues like props in her performance. "Good evening, officers." Brian opened the door with practiced charm. "I'm afraid there's been a family misunderstanding. My father-in-law seems to be having some kind of episode." "An episode?" Of course I was the problem, not the 15 people who'd invaded my home. 2 officers entered, a senior man with gray temples who introduced himself as Officer Johnson, and a younger woman, Officer Martinez. Their presence immediately shifted the room's dynamic. Suddenly Brian's swagger seemed forced, Jessica's tears looked theatrical, and the group's casual appropriation of my space felt obviously wrong. "Sir, are you the homeowner who called about trespassing?" Officer Johnson addressed me directly, his tone professional but sympathetic. "Yes, I'm Richard Clark. This is my property." I pulled the deed from my study, hands steady despite the adrenaline. These people arrived without invitation and refused to leave. Officer Martinez scanned the room, taking in the scattered luggage, empty beer bottles, and general chaos. "How many individuals are we talking about?" 15 when they arrived. Some may have left when they heard the sirens. Brian stepped forward with his most reasonable expression. "Officers, this is clearly a family dispute. Richard's been under stress since moving, and I think he's just overwhelmed by having visitors." "Sir, family relationship doesn't override property rights," Officer Johnson replied, examining my deed. "The homeowner has the legal authority to determine who stays on his property." The simple statement hit the room like a physical blow. For the first time all day, someone in authority had confirmed what I had been saying. This was my house, and my decision. Jessica looked genuinely shocked. "But we're family. Doesn't that mean anything?" Officer Martinez's expression remained neutral. "Ma'am, family status doesn't grant automatic access to someone else's property without permission." "Permission?" Brian's voice rose despite his attempt to stay controlled. "He's been planning this villa as a family gathering place for months. We just assumed—" "You assumed wrong," Officer Johnson cut him off. "Mr. Clark, do you want these individuals removed from your property?" The question hung in the air like a sword waiting to fall. 15 faces stared at me, some angry, some pleading, all finally understanding that their assumptions had been legally meaningless. "Yes," I said clearly. "I want them all to leave immediately." The words felt like lifting a weight I'd carried for years. No explanation, no justification, no apology for setting basic boundaries in my own home. Officer Martinez addressed the group. "You have 15 minutes to gather your belongings and vacate the premises. Anyone who remains after that will be arrested for trespassing." The scramble began immediately. Mike and Kevin moved fastest, grabbing their beer cooler and mumbling apologies as they headed for the door. Ashley shot accusatory looks at Brian while stuffing clothes into her suitcase. Several people I barely recognized simply fled without saying goodbye. "This is ridiculous," Brian protested as he watched his authority collapse. "We drove 4 hours. We made arrangements." "You made arrangements without consulting the property owner," Officer Johnson replied. "That's not a legal reservation, sir." Jessica was gathering her belongings from my master bedroom, her movements sharp with anger. "Richard, you're going to regret this decision for the rest of your life." But I felt no regret, only relief. Watching strangers remove their possessions from my private spaces felt like reclaiming stolen territory. Brian made one final attempt at manipulation as he packed his SUV. "Emily would be ashamed of what you become, old man. Selfish and bitter." Officer Johnson stepped between us. "Sir, you need to leave now. Any further contact with Mr. Clark could be considered harassment." The last car pulled out of my driveway as the sun touched the horizon, painting my villa in golden light. Officer Martinez completed her paperwork, while Officer Johnson explained the documentation process. "You'll have a formal report number for your records. If they return without permission, call us immediately. Today's incident establishes a clear pattern of trespassing." After the officers left, I stood alone in my foyer, surrounded by blessed silence. The chaos was gone. Scattered beer bottles, sandy footprints, the sound of entitled voices claiming my spaces. My phone buzzed with angry text messages, but I turned it off without reading them. For the first time in 6 years, I'd said no without apologizing. I'd called for help instead of suffering in silence. I'd chosen my own peace over their convenience. The ocean waves crashed rhythmically outside my windows, washing the beach clean with each cycle. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: angry phone calls, social media campaigns, family members choosing sides. But tonight, my home was mine again, and that felt like the beginning of something that looked remarkably like freedom. The deadbolt clicked with finality as I watched the last police car disappear down the coastal road, its taillights fading into the gathering dusk. The incident report crinkled in my grip, official documentation that I'd been right, that my home was mine to control. Yet standing in my empty foyer, I felt strangely hollow instead of triumphant. Silence pressed against my eardrums after hours of chaos. No arguing voices, no footsteps on my marble floors, no music bleeding from rooms I'd never authorized anyone to occupy. Just the distant crash of waves and the gentle hum of my air conditioning system. Sounds I'd dreamed of enjoying in peace. I walked through my villa like a crime scene investigator, cataloging the evidence of invasion. Beer cans clustered on my granite countertops. Wet towel prints darkened my hardwood floors, and furniture sat askew where strangers had rearranged my careful design. In the guest bathroom, Jessica's makeup still stained my marble vanity, foundation smears like territorial markings. The master bedroom felt violated in ways beyond the physical. Someone had moved Emily's photo from my nightstand, knocked over during their claiming of my private space. I picked up the silver frame, studying my daughter's gentle face through cracked glass. "Be kind to Brian, Dad," her voice echoed in my memory. "He's hurting too." But Emily had never asked me to be a doormat. She'd requested kindness, not endless financial sacrifice. Standing in my bedroom where strangers had planned to sleep for 3 weeks, I finally understood the difference. My phone buzzed insistently from the kitchen counter where I'd abandoned it during the confrontation. The screen showed 17 missed calls and 43 text messages, all from the same contact, Brian Miller. I read them in chronological order, watching his tone shift from wounded confusion to naked threat. "Richard, we need to talk about what happened today. You embarrassed my wife in front of our friends. That's not acceptable. Family doesn't call police on family. Emily would be disgusted. You think you won today? You have no idea what's coming. By tomorrow, everyone will know what kind of person you really are. Enjoy your empty house, old man. It's all you'll have left." The messages continued, each one darker than the last. Brian's mask had finally slipped completely, revealing the manipulative core I'd been too generous to acknowledge for 6 years. But now, with official documentation of his trespassing and threatening text messages accumulating on my phone, his true nature was creating its own evidence trail. I poured myself 3 fingers of scotch and settled into my leather reading chair, the one positioned to capture the perfect ocean view. Outside, sunset painted the Pacific in shades of gold and crimson, the daily masterpiece I'd bought this villa to enjoy. Yet Brian's threats cast shadows across even this beauty. Had I been too harsh? The question gnawed at me despite the legal validation. They were family, however dysfunctional. Emily's friends, her chosen relationships, her husband's new life. By calling police, had I destroyed bridges that could never be rebuilt? My phone buzzed again. Another message from Brian, this one accompanied by a photo. Jessica crying in their car, her mascara streaked down her cheeks in theatrical rivulets. "Look what you did to her. Happy now?" I deleted the message without responding. Jessica's tears were real, but so was my exhaustion from years of manipulation. So was my right to peace in my own home. So was the $290,000 I'd given them without receiving even basic courtesy in return. The scotch burned warm in my chest as I continued my house restoration ritual. Each straightened piece of furniture felt like reclaiming stolen territory. Each cleaned surface erased evidence of their presumption. The physical work helped process the emotional earthquake of finally saying no. But as evening deepened into night, unease crept in alongside satisfaction. Brian's final messages carried an ominous certainty that worried me more than his earlier rage. "You have no idea what's coming." Wasn't the frustrated threat of someone accepting defeat. It was a promise from someone planning retaliation. I'd won the battle for my home, but something in Brian's tone suggested the war was just beginning. Emily's photo smiled at me from the restored nightstand, her expression peaceful in the lamplight. What would she think of today's events? Would she approve of my standing firm? Or would she see only the destruction of family harmony she'd worked so hard to maintain? "I think you'd understand, sweetheart," I whispered to her image. "You taught me to be generous, not stupid." My phone lit up with another notification, the screen showing Brian's name yet again. This time I turned it off completely, but not before glimpsing the preview of his latest message. "Tomorrow, everyone will see." The threat hung unfinished in the darkness, promising complications I couldn't yet imagine. Whatever Brian was planning, it would arrive with the morning sun. For tonight, at least, my home was mine. But victory had never felt so fragile. Sunlight streamed through my kitchen windows as I reached for my silent phone to check the time. 8:47 a.m. I'd slept poorly, Brian's threats echoing through restless dreams. The device felt warm in my palm, its screen lighting up with a cascade of notifications that made my stomach drop. 47 alerts from Facebook, Instagram, and text messages. My email showed dozens of new messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Something had happened overnight, something significant enough to wake my entire social network. I opened Facebook first, immediately finding Brian's post at the top of my feed. The words hit like a physical blow. My father-in-law kicked his own family out of his house yesterday, called the police on us like we were criminals. Money really does change people. My late wife Emily would be heartbroken to see what her father has become. We just wanted to spend time with him at his new mansion, but apparently we're not worthy anymore. Prayers needed for our family during this difficult time. The post had been shared 43 times overnight. Comments poured down the screen like accusations. Heartbreaking. Can't believe someone would treat family this way. Money corrupts. Poor Jessica and the kids. Kids. There had been no children yesterday, but Brian's narrative was already growing more tragic in the retelling. Jessica had posted a video testimonial, filmed in their car with red-rimmed eyes and trembling voice. "I just can't understand how someone who used to love us could turn so cold. We brought friends to meet him, to share in his success, and he treated us like strangers. Emily used to say her dad was the most generous man alive. I guess she never saw this side of him." My hands shook as I scrolled through the responses. Old neighbors from my previous house, colleagues from my engineering firm, even Emily's college friends, all expressing shock and disappointment. The narrative was simple, compelling, and completely false, but Brian had presented it first, claiming the moral high ground before I even knew a war had started. I tried commenting on his post, fingers clumsy on the small keyboard. "This is one-sided. Brian brought 15 people to my house without invitation or permission. When asked to leave, they refused. I had every right." But my comment looked defensive against Brian's emotional appeal. Within minutes, replies appeared. "Classic gaslighting, Richard. Why are you trying to justify abandoning family?" 15 people? That sounds exaggerated." Brian's response came quickly. "See how he's trying to rewrite history? This is exactly the kind of manipulation Emily used to complain about in private." Emily complaining about me in private. The lie was so audacious, so calculating, that it took my breath away, but people were believing it, sharing it, adding their own interpretations in outrage. Ashley had shared the post with her commentary. "Disgusting behavior from someone who should know better. Jessica's like a daughter to me, and seeing her treated this way makes me sick." Mike added, "We drove 4 hours just to spend time with family. Got treated like criminals for wanting to use his pool. Rich people problems, I guess." A pool party, that's what they were calling their invasion now. A simple request to use family facilities, cruelly denied by a bitter old man with more money than heart. I moved to the kitchen table, coffee growing cold as I read comment after comment. People I'd known for decades were questioning my character based on Brian's carefully crafted sob story. Former neighbors expressed disappointment. Emily's friends spoke of feeling deceived about my true nature. Margaret Chen, Emily's closest college friend, had written, "Richard, I'm shocked. This doesn't sound like the man Emily described. What happened to you?" I tried responding privately. "Margaret, there's much more to this story. Brian brought 15 people to my house without asking, claimed my master bedroom, and refused to leave when I asked them to. The police confirmed I had every right to remove them." Her reply came within an hour. "I find it hard to believe Emily's husband would lie about something like this. Maybe you should look at your own behavior instead of blaming others? The realization hit me like cold water. Brian had weaponized Emily's memory and their shared grief. He was the suffering widower, the devoted husband still mourning my daughter 3 years later. I was the wealthy father-in-law who'd abandoned him in his time of need, choosing money over family bonds. Every attempt to defend myself made me look worse. Social media rewarded emotional authenticity over factual accuracy, and Brian's tearful narrative was perfectly calibrated for viral sympathy. My dry explanations about property rights and legal documentation sounded petty against his heartbroken father-in-law story. By noon, the post had been shared 87 times. Local news pages were picking it up as a human interest story about family dysfunction in wealthy communities. Comment threads spawned their own comment threads, each one amplifying Brian's version while dismissing my attempts at clarification. I closed the laptop in frustrated defeat and stared at my study wall, lined with engineering certificates and achievement awards. 40 years of professional recognition, community service, charitable giving. None of it mattered against one manipulative Facebook post crafted to trigger a maximum emotional response. My college diploma hung in its place of honor, the engineering degree that had taught me systematic problem-solving and evidence-based analysis. Social media wasn't about truth or evidence. It was about narrative control and emotional manipulation, skills I'd never needed to develop and weapons I'd never learned to wield. But engineering had taught me something valuable. Every problem had a solution if you approached it systematically. Brian might have won the first round with superior social media strategy, but this war would ultimately be decided by facts, documentation, and legal reality. I needed to stop playing defense on his chosen battlefield and start building my own case with the tools I understood: evidence, documentation, and professional expertise. The question was whether I could assemble a defense faster than his lies could spread. I turned away from the computer screen and faced my wall of professional achievements: engineering degrees, project awards, 40 years of systematic problem-solving represented in frames and certificates. Brian might understand social media manipulation, but I understood something more fundamental: how to break complex problems into manageable components and solve them methodically. This was just another engineering challenge. Brian had created a structural weakness in his narrative by building it on lies. My job was to find that weakness and exploit it with evidence. I opened my filing cabinet with deliberate precision, retrieving the folder labeled Family Financial Assistance, a habit from my engineering days of documenting everything. Inside, bank statements, canceled checks, and transfer receipts told the real story in black and white numbers. Spreading the documents across my desk chronologically, I began calculating. MBA tuition payments, $45,000 over 2 years. Wedding expenses, $30,000 in a single month. House down payment, $60,000 when Brian's credit couldn't secure decent terms. Emily's medical bills during her cancer treatment, $85,000 in documented payments to hospitals and specialists. Car payments, credit card bailouts, emergency loans that never got repaid. The total reached $290,000 in 6 years of systematic financial support. Not gifts given freely among equals, but an escalating pattern of demands backed by family guilt and Emily's illness. Every payment had a date, amount, and bank record. Brian had forgotten he was dealing with an engineer who documented everything for tax and estate planning purposes. His emotional Facebook narrative would crumble against this mountain of financial evidence. I picked up my phone and dialed Howard Brennan, my estate attorney since Emily's death. We'd worked together on my will, trust arrangements, and property purchases, a professional relationship built on mutual respect and careful documentation. Howard, it's Richard Clark. I need advice about family financial gifts that have become complicated. Richard, good to hear from you. What kind of complications are we talking about? My son-in-law has been posting false information about me on social media, claiming I abandoned the family. But I have documentation showing nearly $300,000 in financial support over 6 years. No loan agreements, no repayment schedules. I treated them as gifts. Now I'm wondering about legal options. Howard's pause was thoughtful. The distinction between gifts and loans can be legally significant, Richard. Without written agreements, debt recovery is difficult. But there are options: detrimental reliance, unjust enrichment, several theories we could explore. Do you have comprehensive documentation? Bank records for everything: dates, amounts, purposes. I can show the pattern of increasing demands and his lifestyle beyond any legitimate income source. Excellent. This kind of systematic exploitation might fall under elder financial abuse statutes, especially given the pattern and amounts involved. Let's meet Monday morning. Bring everything you have. I scheduled the appointment and returned to my document analysis, creating a detailed spreadsheet that revealed the true scope of Brian's financial dependence. His social media posts complained about money problems, while my bank records showed steady payments supporting his lifestyle. The contradiction was damning. Opening Brian's Facebook page, I began screenshotting his financial complaints and requests for help dating back years. Posts about needing money for car repairs while I was paying his insurance. Complaints about expensive medical bills while my accounts showed direct payments to his doctors. A pattern of public poverty, claims contradicted by private financial support. Jessica's Instagram revealed even more damaging evidence. Photos of expensive vacations, designer clothes, restaurant meals at high-end establishments, all funded by money I'd provided while they portrayed themselves as struggling family members deserving sympathy. By afternoon, I had assembled a comprehensive file documenting 6 years of financial manipulation, timeline of payments, screenshots of contradictory social media posts, analysis of lifestyle expenses versus declared income, evidence of systematic deception spanning years, not just yesterday's incident. Brian's Facebook narrative portrayed me as a wealthy miser abandoning poor relatives. My documentation showed the opposite: a generous father-in-law systematically exploited by manipulative in-laws who'd received nearly $300,000 while portraying themselves as victims. The irony was perfect. Brian's strength, his ability to manipulate public perception, had created his weakness. Every social media post claiming poverty was now evidence of deception. Every photograph of expensive purchases was proof of fraudulent financial need. I organized the final stack of documents into a comprehensive file folder, labeling it B. Miller Financial Recovery, in my precise engineer's handwriting. This would be my opening move. Not defensive social media responses, but offensive legal action backed by systematic documentation. Placing the folder in my briefcase for Monday's legal consultation, I glanced at Emily's photo on my desk. Her gentle smile seemed approving, as if she understood that protecting myself wasn't betraying her memory. It was honoring the systematic, careful approach to life she'd always admired in me. "I think you'd approve of this approach, sweetheart," I said quietly. "No emotional manipulation, just facts and evidence." My phone rang with an unknown number, probably another reporter wanting to discuss the family feud that was apparently becoming local news. But I had work to do, documentation to complete, legal strategies to develop. Brian had chosen the wrong opponent. He'd picked a fight with someone who solved problems for a living, who documented everything, who understood that sustainable victories required solid foundations rather than emotional manipulation. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice, self-protection, and ensuring that systematic exploitation couldn't continue hiding behind claims of family loyalty. The game had changed, and I was finally playing to win. Sunday morning dawned clear and purposeful. I sat at my study desk like a general preparing for decisive battle. The comprehensive folder labeled B. Miller Financial Recovery spread before me in organized precision. Coffee steamed beside Emily's photo as I reviewed 6 years of systematic documentation. Bank statements, transfer records, screenshots of Brian's contradictory social media posts, claiming poverty while living off my generosity. At 8:30 a.m., I drove to Howard Brennan's downtown office, my briefcase heavy with evidence. The attorney had agreed to an emergency Sunday consultation after I'd explained the urgency. Brian's social media campaign was gaining momentum daily, and legal response required immediate action. "Richard, this level of documentation is remarkable," Howard said, spreading my financial records across his mahogany conference table. "Most people don't keep such detailed records of family assistance. 40 years of engineering taught me to document everything." I watched him calculate totals, his eyebrows rising with each page. I never imagined I'd need it for this purpose. Howard's fingers traced the timeline of escalating demands. MBA tuition, wedding costs, house down payment, medical bills, multiple emergency loans, all without signed agreements or repayment schedules. Brian treated you like a personal bank. The pattern became clear only when I organized it chronologically. I pulled out my analysis spreadsheet. Small requests at first, always with promises to repay when things stabilized. But his lifestyle never matched any legitimate income source. Without signed loan agreements, we'll argue detrimental reliance and unjust enrichment, Howard explained, his voice gaining professional excitement. Your documentation proves systematic exploitation. This is an exceptionally strong case. What are my realistic chances of recovery? Howard smiled grimly. With this evidence, excellent. Brian won't expect this level of preparation. Most family financial disputes lack documentation. You've built a fortress of facts. We spent 2 hours developing strategy, court filing for Monday morning, service of process to catch Brian off guard, defamation counterclaims based on his false social media narrative, timeline for asset discovery and payment enforcement. At noon, I drove to my bank's main branch, armed with Howard's letter requesting certified transaction records. The branch manager, Patricia Williams, personally handled my sensitive request, understanding the legal implications of comprehensive financial documentation. Mr. Clark, these transfer amounts are significant, she noted, reviewing 6 years of electronic payments to Brian Miller accounts. We'll provide certified copies with official authentication for court submission. The final tally shocked even me, $350 in documented transfers, including several large payments I'd forgotten about during Emily's final months. Emergency room bills, specialist consultations, prescription costs, all paid directly from my accounts, while Brian claimed financial hardship on social media. Patricia arranged official bank seals and notarization for each document, creating legal weight evidence that would withstand courtroom scrutiny. These records clearly establish the pattern you described, Mr. Clark. The court will find them very compelling. From the bank, I drove to the notary office, where every document received official certification. My sworn affidavit detailed Brian's repeated promises to repay when his business stabilized, promises that disappeared as his demands increased and my daughter's illness worsened. Back home by evening, I organized the final comprehensive file, chronological evidence of systematic exploitation, legal documentation of false promises, social media screenshots proving deliberate deception about his financial status. Everything Brian had forgotten about his lies, I had documented and preserved. The irony was perfect. Brian's strength, manipulating public perception through emotional appeals, had created his weakness. Every social media post claiming poverty was now evidence of fraud. Every photograph of expensive purchases contradicted his claims of financial need. I placed the completed legal file in my briefcase, setting my phone alarm for early courthouse arrival. This wasn't about revenge or anger anymore. This was about justice, accountability, and protecting myself from future exploitation through proper legal channels. Looking at Emily's photo on my desk, I spoke quietly to her gentle smile. Tomorrow I fight back properly, sweetheart, the way you taught me, with integrity and preparation. My phone buzzed with another hostile message from Brian. Still waiting for your apology, old man. Family doesn't treat family this way. But Brian had no idea what was coming. While he'd been playing social media games, I'd been building an unassailable legal fortress. Engineering had taught me that sustainable victories required solid foundations, careful planning, and methodical execution. Tomorrow would prove that systematic preparation defeats impulsive manipulation. The game had changed completely, and Brian was about to discover he'd chosen the wrong opponent. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning on my terms. Monday morning arrived with the precision of an engineering timeline. I reached the courthouse at 7:45 a.m., briefcase loaded with documentation that would transform me from defendant in the court of public opinion to plaintiff in the court of law. The filing office opened at 8 a.m. sharp, and I intended to be first in line. Case filing for debt recovery and defamation, I told the clerk, sliding my comprehensive legal package across the counter. She examined the documentation with growing professional appreciation. Howard's legal formatting, bank certifications, notarized affidavits, timeline analysis that read like a forensic accounting report. This is exceptionally well prepared, Mr. Clark, she noted, processing my payment and assigning a case number. Judge Martinez handles debt recovery cases. You'll likely get expedited hearing due to the quality of evidence. Service of process was arranged for immediate delivery to Brian's address. While a court officer drove across town to deliver papers that would shatter his confidence, I returned home to launch the second phase of my coordinated attack. My laptop waited on the kitchen table. Facebook page opened to Brian's viral post about family abandonment. Time to counter his emotional manipulation with systematic facts. I crafted my response with engineering precision. No anger, no defensiveness, just documented evidence presented professionally. I've seen concerning posts about our family situation. Here are the documented facts. I attached screenshots of bank transfers totaling $290,350, organized chronologically with clear descriptions. These funds were provided freely during difficult times, but recent events have changed everything. I'm pursuing legal recovery through proper channels and addressing defamatory statements in court. The post went live at 9:30 a.m., tagged to reach every mutual friend and family member who'd seen Brian's original manipulation. Within minutes, responses began flooding in. Shock, apologies, demands for Brian to explain the financial evidence he'd conveniently omitted from his sob story. Margaret Chen, Emily's college friend who'd questioned my character, commented immediately, "Richard, I had no idea about the financial support. Brian never mentioned any of this. I apologize for judging without facts." Other comments followed rapidly. "This changes everything. Why didn't Brian mention the money? Those are serious amounts over 6 years." Richard was incredibly generous. I spent the morning methodically contacting witnesses, neighbors who'd seen Friday's invasion, Emily's friends with access to full information, my financial advisor who'd processed the large transfers, professional colleagues who could vouch for my character. Each conversation built another pillar, supporting my factual narrative. At 11:15 a.m., my phone rang. Brian's name appeared on the screen, the first time he'd called instead of texting threats. "You filed a lawsuit against me?" His voice carried genuine panic instead of his usual arrogance. "Richard, this is family business. We can work this out privately." "Family business ended when you brought 15 strangers to my home and refused to leave," I replied calmly. "Family business ended when you posted lies on social media to destroy my reputation." "Those weren't lies. You did abandon us." "Brian, I have documentation of every dollar, every promise you made to repay, every social media post where you claim poverty while spending my money. The court will decide what constitutes truth." Silence stretched across the connection. When Brian spoke again, his voice had lost all pretense of control. "What do you want? Money? I can pay some of it back." "The court will determine appropriate restitution. My attorney will handle all communication from now on." I ended the call and returned to my social media campaign, posting screenshots of Brian's threatening text messages from Friday night, alongside his public claims about wanting family reconciliation. The contradiction was stark, privately threatening an elderly man while publicly playing the victim of family abandonment. Jessica called next, her voice shaking with tears that sounded genuinely terrified, rather than theatrically manipulative. "Richard, please. Brian's talking about losing the house, losing everything. Can't we work this out like family?" "Jessica, your husband exploited my grief over Emily's death to systematically extract nearly $300,000. He brought 15 people to my home without permission and called police intervention family abandonment. This stopped being about family the moment he chose manipulation over honesty. By afternoon, the social media landscape had shifted completely. Brian's original post was buried under comments, demanding explanation for the financial evidence. Former supporters were sharing my documentation, expressing shock at the scale of undisclosed financial support. Emily's friends who'd initially supported Brian were now apologizing and questioning his honesty about everything. Brian's social media accounts went silent around 2 p.m. No responses to the mounting questions, no attempts to explain away the financial evidence. The man who dominated narrative control for days had been neutralized by simple presentation of documented facts. Howard called at 3:30 p.m. with updates from court. "The judge reviewed your filing and Brian's panicked response. He's requesting settlement discussions through counsel. Richard, he knows he's lost. This level of documentation in a family financial dispute is unprecedented." Evening brought a final call from an unknown number. Brian's voice was barely recognizable, the confident manipulator, replaced by someone facing consequences for the first time in years. "Richard, I need to talk. Can we meet? Please?" The desperation in his voice was complete, but meetings and discussions belonged to the past, when I'd believed family loyalty required unlimited tolerance for exploitation. "All communication goes through my attorney now, Brian. You know his contact information." I hung up and walked to my deck, watching sunset paint the Pacific in brilliant oranges and purples. Tomorrow would bring more legal proceedings, more social vindication, more confirmation that systematic preparation defeats emotional manipulation. The war was essentially over. Brian had brought a social media campaign to a legal documentation fight and discovered the limitations of lies when confronted with certified bank records. Justice was no longer coming. It had arrived. Friday morning, May the 2nd, I entered the courthouse with calm confidence, Howard beside me carrying additional documentation we'd compiled during the week. Across the hallway, Brian sat slumped in a chair beside a harried-looking public defender, his designer sunglasses gone, his arrogant posture collapsed into defeated resignation. The transformation was remarkable. 5 days ago, he'd controlled the narrative, commanded social media sympathy, and treated my home like conquered territory. Now he looked like what he'd always been beneath the manipulation, a middle-aged man who'd built his lifestyle on someone else's generosity and faced consequences for the first time in his adult life. Judge Martinez reviewed the case file with methodical attention. "Mr. Clark, your documentation is extraordinarily comprehensive. Mr. Miller, your counsel indicates you wish to avoid trial through settlement discussion." Brian's attorney, clearly working with limited resources and overwhelming evidence, attempted a weak defense. "Your Honor, my client maintains these were family gifts, given freely during times of mutual grief and support." "Counselor," Judge Martinez replied, holding up screenshots of Brian's social media posts, "your client's own statements contradict that position. Here he claims financial hardship, while bank records show systematic support from the plaintiff. Here he promises repayment when business stabilizes, then later claims gifts were unconditional." Howard presented our timeline analysis: 6 years of escalating demands, promises of repayment, lifestyle maintenance through Richard's funding while publicly claiming poverty. The pattern was undeniable when displayed chronologically. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "the defamatory social media campaign attempted to destroy Mr. Clark's reputation through deliberate omission of material facts. This constitutes both unjust enrichment and defamation." Brian's attorney requested a recess to consult with his client. 20 minutes later, they returned with a settlement proposal: $150,000 restitution over 3 years, public retraction of social media statements, and cessation of all defamatory communication. "Mr. Clark?" Judge Martinez asked, "do you find this proposal acceptable?" I looked at Brian's defeated face, remembering Emily's gentle voice asking me to be kind to Brian, Dad. He's hurting too. But Emily had never asked me to be a doormat. She'd requested kindness, not unlimited financial exploitation. "I accept the settlement, Your Honor. Justice doesn't require destroying someone, just holding them accountable." The judge entered the agreement into official record. Brian would have 30 days to begin payments or face asset seizure. His required public retraction would be posted to all social media platforms where he'd spread his false narrative. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt Emily's presence more clearly than I had since her death. Not the manipulated memory Brian had weaponized, but her genuine spirit, generous but wise, kind but not naive, loving but protective of those she cared about. Back at my villa, I posted the court decision to social media, with dignity rather than vindictiveness. Our family legal matter has been resolved through proper channels. I'm grateful for everyone's support and look forward to moving forward with renewed appreciation for honest relationships. The response was overwhelming. Emily's friends expressed relief that justice had been served. Former supporters of Brian apologized for believing incomplete information. Even some of his Friday companions messaged privately, admitting they'd felt uncomfortable with the invasion but hadn't spoken up. Brian's required public retraction appeared that evening, a brief, legally mandated acknowledgement that his previous posts contained inaccurate and incomplete information about our family situation. His social media presence, once commanding and manipulative, was reduced to court-ordered damage control. Evening brought a phone call from my nephew David, Emily's cousin, whom I hadn't heard from in months. "Uncle Richard, I saw the news about everything that happened. I wanted to call and say, well, I always wondered how Brian afforded his lifestyle. I'm sorry you went through this, but I'm glad you stood up for yourself." "Thank you, David, and you're always welcome to visit, with proper invitation and discussion of dates that work for both of us." His laugh was warm and genuine. "That sounds perfect. How about next weekend? I'd love to see your new place." I checked my calendar, noting the simple pleasure of being asked rather than commanded, consulted rather than invaded. "Next weekend works beautifully. I'll prepare the guest room properly." As sunset painted my deck in golden light, I sat with a glass of wine and watched peaceful waves roll endlessly toward shore. My phone stayed silent. No threatening messages, no manipulative demands, no false family emergencies requiring immediate financial response. The villa felt truly mine for the first time since I'd purchased it. Not just legally mine through property deed, but emotionally mine through boundaries properly established and maintained. My generosity hadn't been destroyed by setting limits. It had been refined, focused toward relationships built on mutual respect rather than exploitation. Emily's photo smiled from the side table, and I raised my wine glass toward her gentle image. "I think you'd approve, sweetheart. I learned the difference between being generous and being taken advantage of." The ocean waves washed the beach clean with each cycle, carrying away debris and leaving fresh sand for tomorrow's possibilities. 6 years of systematic exploitation had ended not through anger or revenge, but through systematic preparation, legal process, and the simple recognition that kindness requires wisdom. Brian would make his payments, rebuild his life through honest work, and hopefully learn that relationships require reciprocity rather than manipulation. I would enjoy my earned retirement, welcome genuine family visits, and maintain the generous spirit Emily had loved, tempered now with the boundaries that made generosity sustainable. Justice had been served, peace had been restored, and for the first time in years, I looked forward to tomorrow with uncompromised hope. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.